On this week's show, we take a look at Ekkamai, one of Bangkok's up-and-coming places to live.
So if you're into old bus stations, Isan food, cheap rent, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who has lived in Bangkok for 17 years and who, believe it or not, has never been to Wong's.
Wow, that's shocking. And I'm Ed Knuth, a man who thanks Thailand for teaching him so many euphemisms for coup d'etat.
Nice.
Before we start, a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. For a bit more info on how you can do us a solid, just head to the support page on BangkokPodcast.com.
Yeah, and of course, one of the cool things our patrons get is an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we talk about all kinds of stuff. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about my recently obtained, check this out, digital work permit.
Whoa.
And some of the foibles and conflicting rules and regulations that come with staying legal in Thailand.
Definitely.
So on this episode, we thought we'd do another neighborhood focus show. And these shows seem to be pretty popular with our listeners. We get some good feedback on them. And so this week we thought we'd head east all the way out to Ekkamai. Now, some of you spell that with 1 K, some of you spell it with 2. I go back and forth, but it's pronounced the same, Ekkamai. So Ed, what do you know about Ekkamai?
Ekkamai, both Ekkamai and Thong Lor are just, I think, special sois in the world of Sukhumvit, because Sukhumvit is long and it's got different areas, and it's different parts of Sukhumvit have different personalities. But Thong Lor and Ekkamai, they just sit apart as just a little bit more upscale. I think Thong Lor is probably a little more upscale than Ekkamai, maybe a little bit yuppie. Is that word still in use? Can I still use the word yuppie?
You're asking the wrong guy, man. I'm out of touch and old. Is it woke?
I don't. Yeah. What does the word woke mean? I'm not even sure. I'm not woke enough to know. Does woke mean more like politically aware? Is that what woke means, or is it more like hip and stylish?
I think sort of somewhere between politically aware and hip.
Okay, that's just it's too hip for me. It's too hip for me. Sorry. You know what I mean? It's like, would you agree? I mean, both Ekkamai and Thong Lor, they just have this slightly more upscale thing. When you think of Sukhumvit, and then you think of Thong Lor and Ekkamai, they're the nicer area of Sukhumvit. Would you agree? Yeah,
no, the way I think of it is that Thong Lor is like what many Thai Bangkok neighborhoods want to be. They want to be sleek and glammy and full of cool bars and hip restaurants.
That's right.
And they want to have a couple of tall condo buildings where they can charge mega money for the high floors.
That's right.
They want it to be kind of a destination. And Ekkamai, I think of as sort of like Thong Lor's younger, slightly less cooler brother.
Agreed.
And Ekkamai wants to be Thong Lor.
Agreed. I think if I don't know Bangkok history that well, but I think Thong Lor developed first, so it kind of got a head start. I don't know if it was a 10-year head start or 20-year head start. So Thong Lor is more developed. But what do you think? So we kind of decided we're going to do a separate show on Thong Lor. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll do a separate show on Thong Lor because the vibe that you get from Ekkamai and the vibe you get from Thong Lor are similar but very different. And also, there's just so much to do in each of these places that it would be a 2-hour show if we did both of them.
Agreed.
Like, they often get grouped into the same thing. Like, where are you going to be hanging out tonight? Oh, I'm going to go down to Thong Lor, Ekkamai area.
Right. I'm sure most of our listeners know something about Thong Lor and Ekkamai. But if you don't, these are definitely places you got to go. I mean, both Thong Lor and Ekkamai, they have a lot of bars, restaurants, shops. It's just, they're both long. They're both in between Sukhumvit and Petchaburi, and they're very long. Like, every time I go out there, I forget how long they are. There's hundreds of shops.
And let's get some geography out of the way here. Let's orient ourselves. So Ekkamai is also known as Sukhumvit Soi 63, and it runs roughly north-south. So for this episode, here's how we define the Ekkamai neighborhood. So if you're standing on Ekkamai facing north towards Petchaburi Road, the Ekkamai neighborhood will go roughly halfway up the Soi on your left to Thong Lor, and roughly halfway up the Soi on your right to Sukhumvit 71. So it's kind of a long, narrow corridor that ends in between the next big sois out.
That's right.
If that makes
That's
sense.
right. Yeah.
If there's any confusion, just look at the artwork for this episode, and you'll see the red outline of where we define the neighborhood as being.
Right. So there is a very complex neighborhood in between Ekkamai and Thong Lor. There's a lot of sub-sois. We're going to talk a little bit about the sub-sois, but there's a lot of sois in between Thong Lor and Ekkamai that have all kinds of interesting stuff. So we'll hit some of that stuff.
Yeah. Now, Ekkamai is like, on the Sukhumvit side, it's anchored by, of course, the old, I guess they call it the old lady bus station, the Ekkamai bus station, where buses go down to the eastern seaboard, down to Rayong and Pattaya and places like that. So it's a very busy bus station. There's also the Ekkamai BTS station, which is handy. And right on the end as well is the old the cinema. It's kind of a raggedy, slightly run down old cinema. I used to see movies back in the day with my girlfriend there like 12 years ago. But it's still going strong.
There's a mall there, not like one of the new sleeker malls, but there's a mall there.
Yeah.
And then Major Ekkamai, right? Or do they call it Major Sukhumvit is I think what it's actually called.
I don't know what it's called. I haven't been there in a long time, but it's still going strong. There's a gym there. There's a McDonald's there. There's coffee shop there. So, yeah, you can get your groove on there if you want to. But like you said, the real value, I think, in Ekkamai, both for people who want to live there and for people who want to sort of maybe find some of these kind of cool, out-of-the-way restaurants and places to hang out, is the sois that connect the main street of Ekkamai with the sort of back sois in between towards Thong Lor and towards Soi 71.
That's right. I mean, that's not to say there's not a lot of stuff to do on the Soi itself. I mean, I think when as you pointed out, Ekkamai and Thong Lor, they have a different vibe. And one advantage to Thong Lor, which we will get to in a later show, is that for some reason the development on Thong Lor is subdivided more. So there's a lot of small shops. Whereas if you're on Ekkamai, a lot of the property is big lots. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but there's big lots, and what that means is that Ekkamai is not as walkable as Thong Lor. You can walk, like you could walk from Sukhumvit to Petchaburi. I mean, it would take a little while. I mean, it's not it's not a 10-minute walk. It's probably take you an hour. But the thing about walking on Ekkamai is there's big lots where there's nothing going on, or there's construction, or it's just one big building. So it's
and it's kind of got that vibe where like we said, it's not quite Thong Lor yet. It wants to be Thong Lor,
right?
But it's still kind of got this ghetto.
It has gaps,
kind of a abandoned.
Yes,
yeah.
Right.
It's like a really great smile with this person who's missing a few teeth. You're like, whoa,
you're right.
You're almost there. Not
it
quite,
has
though.
Gaps, but within these gaps, there's still dozens of restaurants, shops, bars. So, like, Ekkamai has just a ton of stuff to do. So, when you mentioned we're going to do the show, I made a quick list of what do I think of when I think of Thong Lor, and basically I came up with 5 things.
When you think of Ekkamai?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. God, I don't want to confuse our listeners. Yes. Tonight's show is Ekkamai. Yeah. So when I think of Ekkamai, I think of 5 things. So I'm just gonna go through my 5, and you can interject your stuff. So the first thing I think of when I think of Ekkamai is I think of Isan food. There's a whole bunch of good Isan food on Ekkamai. For example, there's a place called Sabai Jai Gayang, which is just like a chicken place, which is really good.
Man, those Isan chicken joints with like some good lab and sticky rice, that's just so awesome.
Oh, yeah, it's incredible. So there's a whole bunch of different places. There is a noodle shop called Watana Panit. It's basically kind of in the middle of Ekkamai. It is one of those shops that basically serves street food, but it's not actually on the street. So it is a restaurant, but they serve street food. Okay. So that's my number 1. If you like Isan food, Ekkamai is a good place to go.
Yeah, I can see that. It's been a while since I've eaten there, or like I don't know if any of the old places that I used to go there are still there, but they've been there for a long time when I used to go there, so I imagine they're still there. But there's tons to discover, and there's also a lot of like little offices and stuff there, which means that during the daytime there's a lot of restaurants that are selling that type of food, that sort of street food, the chicken, the pork, the rice, and stuff like that. So I imagine there's still a lot of like little carts and restaurants and places with plastic stools that serve some excellent food.
Yeah, it definitely has an active kind of street food scene.
Yeah.
No.
What else did you think of when you think of Ekkamai?
Well, I'm going to stick with food for a minute, and the next thing I think of is Japanese food. So both Thong Lor and Ekkamai have a ton of Japanese food. It's kind of like it's not really a Japanese town. I don't know. There's a ton of Japanese restaurants. There's a place called Jo Shitsu, which is on Ekkamai Soi 1, which is really good. But there are many, many others. So if you're a sushi person or a Japanese food person in general, you could literally just wander Ekkamai and the Sois, and you will bump into Japanese restaurants for sure.
Right. Well, Thong Lor has a huge Japanese community, like especially centered around Thong Lor Soi 13 or so.
That's right. But it extends, as we said, it extends to Ekkamai as well. You are correct, though. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It, obviously there's Japanese places around the city, but it does seem that ethnicities tend to cluster, probably like they do in any major city. There's kind of a place where there's mainly Korean restaurants, and so it does seem like Thong Lor and Ekkamai is heavily Japanese.
Sure. There's Little Arabia, there's Paharat, Little India, there's the Japanese community centers around Thong Lor. Yes, totally.
Okay. The next thing I think of when I think of Ekkamai, not that I've spent a lot of time there, are gentlemen's clubs. I don't know if you might not be aware of this. I don't know.
I don't even know what that would be. Is it a place that you go to buy suits?
Yeah, it could be. You could go there to buy a suit, possibly. I don't even know. I don't even know if the word gentlemen's club is the right thing. But maybe, okay, I'll try to give a quick summary for our listeners. Everybody knows that Bangkok is famous for go-go bars. But there are other types of ways to meet women in Bangkok. And there are a group of clubs which at least most Farangs tend to call gentlemen's clubs. And these places tend to be a lot more expensive. But they're essentially hostess bars where you go in, you sit down, you buy drinks, and then girls come and sit with you. Everything is just way more expensive.
Or this is one of those places where you leave and they're like, oh, here's your 50,000 baht bill for talking to a girl for 2 hours.
That's basically it. So there's a place called Sherbert, a place called Piano, a place called Czech. They're kind of high-end meet cute girl places. But to be honest, I've only been to these places a few times, and I've been with friends of mine who were members and who were running tabs. And I basically told them I wouldn't go in there if we have to split the bill evenly. Because I know how expensive those places are, and I was like, look, hey, Bangkok, we're used to going out with two guys, and the tab is 600 baht, and you go to those places,
right.
You go to those places, and it's 6,000 at least.
Yeah, you're not going to find me in there. That's why I don't know them.
Yeah. So warning. Actually, this is, to be perfectly honest, this is a valuable warning for our listeners, because I think I think what happens with expats is we get so used to prices being so low, we don't pay attention to a lot of times what we're ordering. I'm used to that. I just go eat and drink whatever I want, and I'm like, oh my God, it's only 400 baht. But warning: if you go to these gentlemen's clubs, you're in for the shock of a lifetime when you get that bill. What else on my list? There are some kind of cool bars to hang out in, kind of like pubs. So there's a pub scene. A couple places that have pool tables, and they're not too upscale. It's like so these are not places that are like that expensive. There's a place called the Ekkamai Beer House. There's actually a place called Snobbish, which actually is not very snobbish. And so they're not, they're kind of like, maybe I guess you could call them like mid-tier places, relaxed hangout. So I think like pool bars and kind of pubs. Like that's when I think of Ekkamai. I think of pubs.
Yeah, there's a lot of those there.
And the last thing I got is, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I've only gone a couple times. I'm not huge into it. But there are a couple different game cafes. I'm not even sure. I don't know. Is that what you call them? So are you familiar with these places where you go to play board games?
Oh, yeah. A friend of mine, a guy I used to work with, actually, he moved to Chiang Mai to start up his own game place called the Golden Goblin, and apparently they're really popular. They're all over the place.
Well, there's 2 or maybe 3 in Ekkamai. There's a place I know called Caveman Base. But if you're into playing board games, Ekkamai's got a scene. There's at least 2 and maybe 3 different places. So it is it's not a bad area to go to just hang out.
Right.
It is spread out, like we warned you. So Ekkamai is stretched out. You could walk the whole thing, but it's not the best walking, but sections of it are very walkable with a lot of places you could hang out.
Well, while we're talking about food, I want to mention one of my favorite places. I would say this is the best chicken wings in Bangkok, bar none. It's called Soi Urban Eatery, and on Ekkamai Soi 5, that goes through and it connects to Thong Lor Soi 10. It's the same street, but on one end it's Thong Lor 10, and on the other end it's Ekkamai 5.
That's right.
And right in the middle, there's Soi. And it's actually, a little bit of trivia note, it's actually owned by a Canadian guy. And Ed, have you ever heard of a Caesar?
A Caesar? No, I don't think I have.
A Caesar, a drink, the alcoholic drink, a Caesar.
I have not. No, I have not.
Well, they have them at this place because it's a Canadian drink. Caesar was actually invented in Calgary, where I'm from.
Oh, interesting.
And you know what a Bloody Mary is? Vodka, tomato juice.
I do.
Right. Well, a Caesar, instead of tomato juice, they use clamato juice. And clamato juice is tomato juice mixed with essence of clam.
Okay, that sounds horrible.
It sounds horrible, but it ain't bad. And they put a little bit of Tabasco sauce in there, and it's basically a spicy Bloody Mary with an extra kick. Definitely worth trying.
Okay, maybe after I've had 5 Bloody Marys, then I'll try one of those.
I'll tell you what, man. Let's go down to Soi one night. We'll have some chicken wings. You and I will have a Caesar.
Okay, I'll try it. I'm up for anything at least once.
We'll report back. But for my money, Soi has the best chicken wings in town.
Well, since you mentioned Soi, we should mention that it's in kind of a it's not really in a mall, but it's in kind of an area. I think it's called Arena, and it's got all kinds of weird stuff in there. There's a Japanese restaurant. Have you seen? There's actually an indoor soccer field, or it's a covered, not necessarily indoor, but a covered kind of soccer field they have in there as well.
Yeah, I went to a big outdoor party there one time.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a little. I don't know what to call it. It's like someone has a huge lot and they decided to put up a bunch of little bars and drinking establishments, but like loud dance club style.
Yeah, it's worth checking out. I think it's the whole area is called Arena, and as Greg pointed out, it's on Thong Lor Soi 10 and Ekkamai Soi 5.
When I used to live at the very end of Thong Lor on Petchaburi, and this area before it became the cool place it is now, this little area on Thong Lor 10, Soi Ekkamai 5. There used to be a restaurant there called like I Love You or something, and it was all themed around being brokenhearted. And I remember one of the things you could do was you could go to this sort of side of the restaurant, and they had this long passageway, and at the end was a projector, and you could take a picture of like an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend, and you could have them projected onto the wall, and you would throw bottles at their picture.
That is exactly right. I've been to that bar. I wish I could remember what that bar was called. Yeah, it was a very unusual place. It had several different rooms. So it's like you could go into a room depending on where you were in your breakup. And they actually had like a final room you could go to if you were ready to start meeting someone else. So it's like if you'd gotten over your breakup, you could go into like the hookup room. But I remember when I went there with my friends, we didn't have any pictures of exes, so they had some established pictures you could choose. So we chose Britney Spears. So they projected Britney Spears on the wall, and we got to throw beer bottles at Britney Spears on the wall
while screaming, "Oops, I did it again!"
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that bar is open anymore. So I don't know what use that will be to our listeners, but that's actually just a cool cut through. That cut through from Thong Lor 10 to Ekkamai 5 is just a kind of cool cut through. There's a couple of Thai clubs there, like Thai discos there, if you're into that scene. So there's a lot of stuff on that side.
Right. And I also have to mention one of my favorite places. It's on Ekkamai Soi 21 called Tuba. It's a very cool, eclectic, ultra hip place with weird furniture and strange things on the wall, and all of it's for sale. It's got crazy decorations and the best margaritas in Bangkok.
Is it? What are they known for? They're known for margaritas. Is that right?
Well, I know them for margaritas because I think you'll have to check the website. But some night is 2 for 1, and they're not like your regular margaritas. They come in like a basin, and you can get just blitzed on these things. There's been many a night where I've stumbled out of the back sois of Ekkamai onto Thong Lor looking for a late night McDonald's fix.
I see.
After hitting Tuba.
I see. All right, Tuba. That's a good thing to remember.
And let's talk up a little bit about where you can live. Like Ekkamai's really changed over the sort of 15 years or so that I've been hanging around. But especially sort of on the east side of Ekkamai, between Ekkamai and Soi 71, there's a whole sort of spider web of sois, and there's some really, really great finds apartment-wise back there. They're not going to be as classy or as polished or as high so as stuff you'll find on Thong Lor, but they're older buildings, which means they're bigger apartments.
That's right.
But there's some really, really character cool places back there.
That's right. I know. I have a buddy who lives down there. That's exactly right. You know, all of Thong Lor and Ekkamai has just thousands of condos. So there's condos and apartments everywhere, and it's one of those areas where if you're in a certain location, you're going to pay top dollar. You know, Thong Lor is probably more expensive than Ekkamai, but there's some really expensive places on Ekkamai as well, like if you're close to the BTS or whatever. But then if you walk, 300 meters down a Soi and take a left turn and a right turn, you're really not that far away, and there are good deals to be found.
And it's super quiet. Yeah, there's a couple of... I've been tooling around doing some research for the episode on Street View on Google Maps, and you're like, oh my God, this is like a beautiful little Soi. It's got colorful flowers and like nice gated communities. It's really, really cool.
The sub-sois of Sukhumvit are... They're one of the hidden treats of Bangkok. There's thousands of these sub-sois in Sukhumvit with all kinds of interesting places to live or check out.
And what I should also mention too, I'm just looking at a map here, and I forgot to mention earlier, you have on one side, on the Sukhumvit side of Ekkamai, you have the BTS and the bus station, but on the other side, on the Petchaburi side, you have the Sanseb Canal.
That's right.
Which is not the nicest, cleanest, or quietest way to get around. But if you're looking to get from one side of the downtown to the other cheaply and quickly, you can't beat the canal boat, the Klong boat.
That is true.
On Sanseb Canal.
Quite convenient, actually.
Yeah. So down they have the Charnisera Pier, which is right behind the Charnisera Tower 2 building on Petchaburi Road. But it's pretty easy to get to if you're on Ekkamai. So you've got that on one end, you got the SkyTrain on the other end. So that almost makes up for the fact that traffic on Ekkamai is awful.
In general.
Especially during rush hour.
In general, it's pretty bad. I think the reason is that Ekkamai extends out very far, right? It's actually kind of a main thoroughfare going out like towards Ramintra. Is that correct?
Yeah. If you just go to follow it across Petchaburi, it becomes Pradit Mahatam Road, I think. And then it extends into the Ramintra Expressway. So it's a major artery out towards the...
That's right. So people use Ekkamai to get in and out of the city.
Yeah, so beware if you're heading down there in a car sort of in the morning or in the afternoon on a weekday. But yeah, man, there's lots of cool little coffee shops. It's nice to spend a lazy day just wandering around. There's a couple of really cool pastry shops and artisan coffee shops, and I'm just looking at the map now, and there's tons of places sort of back in these sois that you would never think of.
As you pointed out, it's the Thong Lor like wannabe, so there's a lot of construction. There's a lot of construction, a lot of new places. Yeah,
so that's our look at Ekkamai, I guess. I mean, it's a really cool place, and I highly recommend people check it out.
For sure.
I wouldn't mind living down there.
Oh, it'd be great. Yeah, I think it's a great area to live.
One of those up and coming places. I think I think you're right. I think in about 6, 8, 10 years, it's going to be where Thong Lor is now. It's going to be super hip and shiny and sort of a destination Soi.
Yep, no doubt.
All right, well, let's get on to everyone's favorite segment of the show, and that is Love, Loathe, or Leave, where one of us surprises the other guy with a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or hate so much that it makes us want to leave forever. And this week, Ed, it's up to you. So what do you got for me?
What do you think about being given a straw with absolutely every beverage you buy, including every can of Coke or every can of whatever? They must give you a straw.
Yeah, I hate it. I loathe it. And especially now, in recent months, I've been made very aware of like, we all know the plastic bags, and I think that's been a love, loathe, or leave before. The plastic bags and the spoons that people force you to get. But that the straws is sort of a subsection of that. I hate it because they're almost always unnecessary. And in recent months, especially, there's been a couple of very big hotel chains in Asia that have pledged to out.
That's right.
they've outlawed straws, or they're using metal or bamboo straws, reusable, environmentally friendly ones.
That's right.
So it's gaining momentum, and I just think back to this video I saw on YouTube where these guys are trying to pull a straw out of a turtle's nose.
Oh,
like
wow.
A sea turtle.
Oh, that is foul.
And it's a horrible, horrible video. This poor little animal.
Well, how many people use a straw to drink out of a can? Is that a Thai thing?
No, I guess I never really thought about it much, but I have. It's unnecessary. But I've really been made aware recently of how much straw. You think like a straw, you go out for breakfast, you have a straw. You go out you buy a can of Coke at the 7-Eleven, they give you a straw. You go out for lunch, there's a couple of straws. Each of us probably put in 3-4 straws a day. These things add up to hundreds of millions of things. So I loathe it. I hate it. And check this out too. Something that I saw on Kickstarter was it's called The Last Straw, I think. We just saw this a few weeks ago. And it's a little straw that you carry around with you. And it folds up, like a blind person's cane. It's kind of like that, but it's a straw.
Oh, genius. So you have your own personal straw.
Yeah. You carry it on your keychain and you just whip it out and it goes click, 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 and it comes the straw. And it comes with like a little stick that you can clean it with. And
I love it.
It's a neat idea. So I think we're reaching a tipping point. But yeah, Thailand really has to do some work here because I loathe it. I think they're almost always unnecessary.
Well, I remember a long time ago when I learned how to say "my lot." I say that.
My lot.
I say that 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah. Lot is straw.
Yeah, I don't want a straw.
And it's not only the straw. Almost always they come wrapped in paper or plastic.
Right, of course. You got to tear it apart. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a solid loathe from both of you and me. It's a nice convenience, but one we can easily do without, and we'll just continue right on through the day without even noticing.
I loathe them.
Well, while we're signing off here, a big thanks again to all of our patrons. We got a few at the T-shirt level who we want to have to make a new design for, like I said, and a few new guys who get the bonus episodes. But we appreciate you all. And if you want more info, everyone, just go to bangkokpodcast.com and click on the support tab to learn all about that.
And before I forget, I want to thank my buddy Paul Tan, who lives out on Thong Lor, who helped me remember some of the details about Ekkamai. Thanks a lot, Paul. I appreciate it. And if you want to get in touch with us, we are at Bangkok Podcasts on Facebook and Twitter. Or you can send us a message via the contact form on bangkokpodcast.com, where we're usually pretty good at getting back to you.
You can also find us online, where we post each episode and carry on conversations with our listeners. And you can also reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
So obviously we recorded this interview a few weeks ago, and we just managed to get it up now. But actually, I can't say that.